Welcome back to the show. A Western Sydney bakery is sparking outrage this morning, sharing images of custom-made cupcakes depicting an infamous Hamas terrorist. What's worse, they were made for a 4-year-old's birthday party.
To discuss, we're joined by Australia's former ambassador to Israel, Senator Dave Sharma, live from Tel Aviv. Dave, thanks for your time. I guess, first of all, what is it like in Israel at the moment?
Look, it's still a nation in a lot of trauma. People are still very sad. You know, people are still dying each day. There are still rockets coming from Hamas each day. There's a lot of people with people in service, in uniform. And look, I've met with some of the family members of hostages who are still being held by Hamas. And as you can imagine, they're in a state of terrible anxiety and distress. So it still feels like a nation that's very much traumatised by the attacks of 7th of October.
All right, and very cognizant, I would imagine, of what's going on around the world. Let's go back to these cupcakes now. A 4-year-old child is pictured posing with the cupcakes dressed as a Hamas terrorist. The Australian Jewish group has called this child abuse. What's the fallout for you?
Look, I just think it's really sick and depraved, Carl. I think, you know, look, I was at the site of the Nova Music Festival yesterday, where about 350 young Israelis were slaughtered, women were sexually assaulted, bodies were mutilated. That was committed by Hamas, and this bakery is glorifying those sorts of acts, which are fundamentally at odds with any sort of human decency, certainly fundamentally at odds with Australian values. We just should not be glorifying or celebrating in any way this sort of barbarism. No matter what your views on this conflict are, we should not be celebrating or even tolerating this sort of action.
Yeah, and the bakery has since removed the images from social media. Would an apology be expected too?
Look, I would hope so. I think they should reflect on their actions. They've got a lot of criticism, and rightly so. But I think it's deeply insensitive, and it would be the same, you know, whichever nationalities were involved. If you're celebrating and glorifying, you know, the sort of barbarism that we saw on the 7th of October, no one should be doing that, and no one, people should be apologising if they are.
If we can, if it's at all possible, to take the climate down a couple of notches, especially in other parts of the world. Look, just on the ICC as well, do you support... There's been some talk about sanctions against the ICC now in light of what happened yesterday. Do you think that's... what would that look like?
Well, look, the United States, which isn't a member of the ICC, is talking about imposing sanctions to prohibit cooperation of US entities with the ICC and the prosecutor. Australia's in a different position. We are a member of the International Criminal Court. We're one of the founding members. But I think we should be reassessing our membership and our support for that organisation in light of this grotesque decision to put the butchers of Hamas on the same charge sheet as the democratically elected leaders of a responsible state that is exercising its right to self-defence. And I think the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, needs to come out with a clear position on this.
It doesn't look like anything's going to happen with that, though.
Well, no, I mean, he seems to make the case that this is before a court. Well, Australia comments on issues before international tribunals all the time. This isn't like a charge sheet at the, you know, Darlinghurst Magistrates Court. This isn't an international tribunal. Australia is entitled to have a view. Other world leaders have expressed a view. Anthony Albanese should do the same and tell us what he actually thinks.
All right, Dave, we'll see if that is forthcoming. Thanks so much for joining us today. Well, just
Thanks,
ahead,
Dave.
medical leaders call for calm.
Sarah, this follows Victoria recording Australia's first case of bird flu. I'm live with the details right after this.
Plus, road trip tantrums. That was Alex over the weekend. In the back of his car. The Wiggles have the solution live from their big red car. That's right. This is Today on 9 and 9 now. Back in a tick.
The superstars of tennis are back. Roland Garros, live and free on 9 Gem and 9 now. And ad-free on Stan Sport.